So today we're going to move on to example 2. There's a couple different parts of these, and then also example number 3. All right. I'll be honest, you've got a bulk of what you already needed to know completed from yesterday. Okay. But here's where it's going to get a little different. When I asked you to write an equation in slope-intercept form, how many different answers were there? If I said write this equation in y equals mx plus b, how many different answers were there? There was one. Because every line has one slope and one y-intercept, and that is it. And again, I go back to why do people learn slope-intercept form first? I think someone is that comfort level. Like I can read an answer, and we all know what it is, and we're good to go, and that's the only answer that there can be. Okay? Yesterday, we looked at examples 1a, b, and c. Okay? How many different answers did we have to those problems? We had one. Why was there one? Because I gave you the slope, and I gave you 1 point. And from that slope and 1 point, you went ahead and wrote your equation. Okay? Here's where today is going to get a little different. All of today's answers are going to have multiple variations that all mean the same thing. Okay? And again, my hope today, at least in the first example, is to show you that even though that these look a lot different, they are in fact the same answer as we move forward. So when it comes to checking our homework tomorrow, every one of these could technically have an infinite number of answers, which is going to be weird. Because literally out of the 11 of you that are here today, you could all 11 have a different answer and you would all 11 still be correct. Okay? So, write the equation in point slope form of the line that passes through the points of -1, -4, and 5, -1. Okay? So what are the two things we need in order to write the equation of a line in point slope form? We need a slope, which we don't have, and we need a point, which we do have. Okay, now again, you might say, well, one of those points isn't the y-intercept. I don't care. We don't need that. That was, again, the difference, and I'm trying to catch everything up here a little bit. That's the difference between slope-intercept and point-slope. In slope-intercept, you had to know the y-intercept. In point-slope, we don't care if it's the y-intercept. But we really can't get around the fact that you still have to be able to find your slope. So let's go ahead and do that to begin with here. Okay? So whether you use your t-table that we've talked about before, whether you use your slope formula, we need to be able to find the slope of this line. So I'm going to say that m is equal to, and I'm going to go to my slope formula. Okay, I'm going to begin with y2 being my -1. Okay, so from -1, I'm going to subtract a -4. And then what do I have to do on the bottom? If I'm using that order right there. I got to use what? I got to use the 5 first. And from 5, I'm going to subtract a -1. And so in each of these problems, both the numerator and the denominator, we end up with a minus and negative, which ultimately means that we're going to be adding a positive. So if I take -1 and add 4, that's going to give us a positive 3. And if I take 5 and add 1, that's going to give me a positive 6. What are we going to expect you to do with all the slopes? Reduce them, divide the top and the bottom here each by what? By 3. And I'm going to end up with a slope that's equal to 1/2. Now, this is where you can go in 2 different directions. You need a slope and a point, or the slope and a point to write your equation. You already know the slope, but you also know 2 points. So I'm not going to expect you to do this problem twice. I expect you to do it once. And you have a choice. And sometimes that's the struggle for students. You mean, I can do whatever I want? Yes. So you can't just say, well, this is what I'm always going to do. You can do whatever you'd like. Caleb, what point do you want to use to write your equation, the first or the second one? Okay, so Caleb wants to use the second one. So if we choose this point right here of 5, -1, and we plug it into our equation, okay, again, I'm going to do my simplifying as kind of some different steps here. So Caleb's work would show this, y minus y sub 1, which is -1, equals the slope, which we said was 1/2, and then in parentheses, x minus 5. Okay, and then of course, we know that we have to simplify. Now, when I walked around to check your homework, I noticed that most of you just went right to the simplified part. And I told you yesterday that I'm fine with that. Okay? Some of you wrote this and then simplified below it. Whatever works for you. Okay? The final answer for this form with this point would be y plus 1 equals 1/2 times the quantity of x minus 5. Okay? Now, that's all you have to do. Because you wrote the equation, that's it. You don't need to go any farther. Okay? But I am, just so we all understand this, I'm going to use the second point to show you that there's also a second answer. So what if we chose to use the ordered pair of -1, -4? Okay? So when we go to plug that in, it would be y minus the y value, which is -4, equals 1/2 times x minus the x value, which is a -1. Okay, now in each of these problems, on both the left and the right-hand side, we are going to have to simplify this, because that minus a negative is going to become a plus. So this now becomes y plus 4 equals 1/2 times x plus 1. So that's the second correct answer that you can have. Now, here's the struggle for some students, and hopefully not for you, but for some. They look at that and they go, hey, Mr. Tompkins, I got two lines that both happen to have the same slope. How ironic is that? Well, not only do you have two lines that have the same slope, you have two lines that are the exact same line. But it's not easy to recognize that because we use different points. So I'm not going to ask you to do this after today, but I did actually already kind of show you how you can utilize this. How could I show somebody that these are in fact the same line? Because right now, some people would walk in and be like, I'm not convinced. Yes, they have the same slope, but how do I prove to somebody those are the same lines?
So like if you did the equation with the 5 comma -1, you don't know the points split on the same parts.
Nope, not quite. If I want to show somebody that these two equations are in fact the exact same equation, I'm going to take these two, and again, this is why we're only going to do this once, but I'm going to convert them into slope-intercept form. Okay, look what happens here. How do we say we go to from point slope to slope-intercept? We already did this. Begin by distributing. Y plus 1 equals 1/2 x minus 2.5. Okay, then we'd subtract 1 from both sides and we get y equals 1/2 x minus 3.5. Okay, if you do that same thing over here and begin by distributing, you're going to get y plus 4 equals 1/2 x plus 0.5. And if you subtract 4 from both sides, you're going to get y equals 1/2 x minus 3.5 again. Because remember, how many slopes does a line have? It's got 1. How many y-intercepts does the line have? It has 1. So when I compare the slope and the y-intercept of this line, and it's the same as the slope and the y-intercept of this line, these are in fact the same line. Now, will I ever expect you to do this to show that they're the same line? No. But what I want to do is at least do it once so you understand that both answers are talking about the same line. It's hard to recognize that in point slope form. It's easy to recognize that in slope-intercept form. So if you convert that into slope-intercept form, then you're all of a sudden saying, yes, these are in fact the same lines as we go. All right. So you guys go ahead and get a little bit of a head start on me here. Try example 2B, please. so we should begin in problem number 2b. Again, we have to find your slope. The slope in this problem, I don't care if you use your slope formula, table, whatever, our slope should turn out to be equal to a -1 when we get done. All right, now I'm going to write each of the two possible answers here. If I choose this first ordered pair, and I'm going to go straight to the simplified answer because it's going to save us time as we go, okay? This is going to become y minus 3 equals negative, and you can either put the 1 there or you can just leave it as a negative. We've talked about that since last year. They're implied to be the same thing. And then in parentheses is going to be this x plus 2, okay? Or if you want to use the second ordered pair, you would have y minus 5 equals -1, and then in parentheses, the quantity of x plus 4. Again, don't write both. Because when I start seeing people write both, I often think that they don't see that they're the same equation. Write one and be done with it. Okay? All right. Go ahead and wrap up example 2C here before lunch. All right, so now I switched up and I went ahead and made a table to begin with. Okay, so again, that's the other option we talked about when we talked about finding slope, but your slope should turn out to be equal to a -1/4. Okay, now most people, I'll be honest, they don't like the zeros in that, so a lot of people will kind of go to that ordered pair of 4, 1. So if you did that, you're going to have y minus 1 equals -1/4 times the quantity of x minus 4, okay? But if you did choose to use that first ordered pair with the y-intercept of 2, it's going to be y minus 2 equals -1/4 x, and then nothing else. Okay, some people like to keep the parentheses around the x because that keeps them in mind that is point slope form. I'm fine with that, that's okay. But I am going to point out I don't want it to be the x minus 0 in there. That's what we talked about yesterday as one of the examples. We're going to simplify that if there's a 0 in the problem and just get rid of it entirely. Okay, so those are the two answers that we're looking for that particular problem there. All right, so are there questions on example 2A, B, or C? Again, not a whole lot different, except the fact that we're recognizing there now are more than one correct answers.